Scopic colonialism represents a profound intersection of historical practices of domination, modern digital capitalism, and the neuroscientific manipulation of perception and behavior. At its core, it is a framework that interrogates how visuality, the way images, symbols, and visual systems are constructed and consumed, has become a tool of power, exploitation, and psychological control. What differentiates Scopic colonialism from its historical antecedents is the shift from territorial domination to cognitive and emotional colonization. Through the mechanisms of digital capitalism, this visual exploitation infiltrates individual and collective psyches, transforming how people perceive themselves, their identities, and their relationships to society. Its epidemiology reveals not only the global reach of visual hegemony, but also its deeply ingrained impact on mental health, necessitating new clinical approaches to address its unconscious and subconscious dimensions. The spread of Scopic colonialism operates like an epidemic, transcending geographic and cultural boundaries to affect populations on a global scale. The ubiquity of digital platforms ensures that no region or demographic is untouched by its visual hegemony. The epidemiological footprint of Scopic colonialism is visible in the homogenization of cultural aesthetics, the reinforcement of beauty standards, and the commodification of identity. For example, Western beauty ideals dominate global visual culture, marginalizing non-Western aesthetics and creating a monoculture of aspirational images. Social media platforms amplify these dynamics, using algorithms to curate content that prioritizes visual conformity and economic profitability. The prevalence of Scopic colonialism is particularly acute among vulnerable populations, such as adolescents and marginalized communities. Epidemiological data reveals alarming correlations between social media use and mental health crises. For instance, research has shown that rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide among adolescents, particularly girls, have risen dramatically since the advent of image-centric platforms like Instagram. Frances Haugen's revelations about Meta's internal research highlighted that 1 in 3 teenage girls experiences worsened body image issues due to Instagram, and these effects contribute to broader mental health epidemics. Scopic colonialism thus acts as a vector for psychological harm, embedding alienating and destructive narratives in the psyches of its most vulnerable users. Scopic colonialism exerts its most insidious effects by infiltrating the unconscious and subconscious dimensions of human cognition. Visual culture, particularly as mediated by digital platforms, operates on automatic cognitive processes such as selective attention, emotional resonance, and predictive coding. These mechanisms ensure that users internalize the ideologies embedded in visual content without active resistance or awareness. This unconscious engagement creates a fertile ground for psychopathology, as users struggle to reconcile the fragmented, commodified versions of their identities presented online with their authentic selves. One of the primary manifestations of this psychopathology is body dysmorphia, which has become increasingly prevalent among adolescents and young adults. The constant exposure to idealized and unattainable body images creates a distorted sense of self, leading to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and obsessive behaviors. This visual alienation extends beyond the individual, shaping collective experiences of identity and belonging. Communities that do not conform to dominant visual norms, such as those defined by race, gender, or disability, experience systemic erasure and marginalization, further entrenching societal inequalities. The psychopathological effects of Scopic colonialism also manifest in more subtle ways, such as chronic stress, hypervigilance, and emotional exhaustion. The relentless demand for visual performance on social media fosters a culture of comparison and competition, where self-worth is measured by metrics like likes, views, and shares. Over time, this externalization of value erodes the capacity for self-reflection and emotional resilience, leaving individuals trapped in cycles of validation and despair. Addressing the psychological and emotional toll of Scopic colonialism, requires a reimagining of clinical settings and therapeutic practices. Traditional clinical approaches often focus on treating symptoms without addressing the underlying cultural and systemic forces that contribute to mental health issues. Scopic colonialism demands a more integrated approach, one that combines insights from psychology, psychoanalysis, neuroscience, and critical cultural studies to explore the unconscious and subconscious dimensions of visual exploitation. One promising avenue is the development of therapeutic interventions that specifically target the visual unconscious. These interventions could involve practices such as visual journaling, where patients use images to express and explore their emotions, or guided imagery therapy, which helps individuals reconstruct their internal, visual landscapes in ways that promote healing and resilience. Psychoanalytic approaches could also be adapted to address the specific challenges of Scopic colonialism, focusing on the role of visuality in shaping desires, fears, and identity conflicts. Neuroscience-informed therapies offer additional tools for addressing the cognitive and emotional impacts of Scopic colonialism. Techniques such as neurofeedback and mindfulness-based interventions can help individuals develop greater awareness of how visual stimuli affect their thoughts and behaviors, empowering them to resist manipulative visual systems. These approaches can be particularly effective in helping individuals break free from the addictive feedback loops created by social media platforms, fostering a sense of agency and self-control. While the reach of Scopic colonialism is pervasive, it is not insurmountable. Resistance begins with awareness, understanding how visual systems operate and recognizing their impact on mental health and social structures. This awareness must be coupled with efforts to reclaim the visual space as a site of empowerment, rather than exploitation. For individuals, this might involve cultivating critical media literacy, developing skills to analyze and challenge the narratives embedded in visual content. For communities, it could mean creating and promoting alternative visual narratives that celebrate diversity, authenticity, and resilience. On a systemic level, disrupting the mechanisms of Scopic colonialism requires structural changes in how visual technologies are designed and regulated. Ethical design principles, such as prioritizing user well-being over profit, can mitigate the harms of algorithmic curation and commodification. Policymakers can play a crucial role by enforcing transparency in content moderation and algorithmic processes, ensuring that platforms are held accountable for the psychological and cultural impacts of their practices. Ultimately, addressing the violence of Scopic colonialism demands a holistic approach that integrates cultural critique, clinical practice, and collective action. By examining its neuroscientific mechanisms, exploring its epidemiology, and developing new therapeutic frameworks, society can begin to dismantle the systems that sustain visual domination. This perspective seeks to contribute to that effort, offering a comprehensive analysis of Scopic colonialism and its impacts while envisioning pathways for resistance and liberation. Scopic Colonialism, script by Liviu Poenaru, Doctor in Psychology, Geneva.